She used to say it like it was beautiful. Everything finds its way back eventually. Nathan, every cherished thing, every gift someone swore they'd keep forever, sooner or later, it ends up somewhere waiting. On a shelf under fluorescent lights, with a price sticker on it. She'd say it while turning some old ceramic dish over in her hands, checking the maker's mark on the bottom, smiling like she was sharing a secret only she had access to. I used to think it was charming. The kind of melancholy observation you expect from a woman who cried at old photographs and kept every handwritten note anyone had ever left her. I can't hear those words now without feeling the floor dissolve beneath me. Because I know what she was actually looking for on those shelves, and I know what was looking back. My name is Nathan Voss, my wife's name is Delia, and 2 years ago we moved to a small Ohio town called Garner Falls, the kind of place that peaked sometime in the late 50s, and has been quietly contracting ever since. A main street with a diner, a hardware store, 2 churches, and a row of storefronts that cycle through hopeful small businesses every couple of years, until the brown paper goes up over the windows again. 4 blocks from our front door, wedged between a dry cleaner and a shuttered shoe repair shop, sits a thrift store called Tender Mercies. You've seen 100 stores like it. Hand-painted sign slightly crooked. Window display that makes no particular sense. A rocking horse beside a set of golf clubs. Beside a dress form, wearing a wedding veil from another decade. A bell over the door, that smell when you walk in. The one every thrift store on earth seems to share, like the buildings themselves manufacture it. Old paper and cedar, and something underneath all of it. Something faintly sweet, like flowers kept 3 days past when you should have thrown them out. We moved to Garner Falls because of Delia's father, Clarence. He was 76, living alone in the house Delia grew up in, and his health had started doing that thing where every phone call from him carried slightly more weight than the last. A fall on the back steps, a prescription that needed managing, a cardiologist who used the word monitoring with careful frequency. For 8 weeks it was good, genuinely good. Then, on a gray Wednesday in February, Clarence sat down in his reading chair with his evening tea, closed his eyes, and didn't open them again. The doctor said it was his heart, said it was quick, probably painless, probably like falling asleep. People say that like it's supposed to help. Here is the thing you need to understand, because everything that comes after grows from this one moment. The morning Clarence died, he called Delia at 9:52 a.m. She was in the middle of a video call with 11 people mid-sentence sharing her screen. She saw his name on her phone and silenced it. Told herself she'd call back after lunch. He never left voicemails, never had head just call again later. He always called again. Except this time, there was no later. When Delia called back at 12:40, the phone rang, and something shifted in her stomach, and she drove to his house with her hazards on, and found him in the reading chair with the tea gone cold on the side table, and a nature program playing to an empty room. We never found out why he called, probably nothing, probably a question about Sunday dinner, or a bird head spotted at the feeder, or a joke head remembered, and couldn't wait to tell her. That's what I kept saying in the weeks after. It was probably nothing, Del. He probably just wanted to hear your voice. But she'd go quiet whenever I said it, and I eventually understood that probably nothing was its own particular kind of cruelty, because it could have been anything. It could have been, I love you. It could have been something feels wrong. It could have been the last sentence he ever wanted to say to another living person. And Delia had looked at the phone and pressed the button, and gone back to her presentation. Grief does different things to different people. For me, when my mother died, it was like weather. It moved through me slowly and eventually passed, though it still rains sometimes. For Delia, it wasn't weather, it was construction. She started building something with her grief room by room, and I didn't understand what she was building until I was already sealed inside it. The second thing you need to know is what happened to Clarence's belongings. Delia has an older brother named Paul. He flew in from Denver, stayed 10 days, and decided the kindest thing he could do for his grieving sister was handle everything so she wouldn't have to. He hired an estate cleanout company, the kind with a crew and a truck that can empty a house in 2 days. Furniture, clothes, kitchenware, jewelry, 7 decades of accumulated life, anything the family didn't explicitly claim, got donated. By the time Delia surfaced enough to ask about her father's things, his reading glasses, the wooden clock head wound, every Sunday morning, the small painted music box that had sat on his dresser since before she was born, it was all gone. Scattered across donation centers within a 50-mile radius. One of the names on the company's partner list, I found out later, when I finally thought to call them myself, was Tender Mercies. The thrift store 4 blocks from our front door, the store Delia started visiting that summer. The store she started visiting every single day. It started with a clock. She came home one evening in May, carrying it in a small paper bag, the kind that means you've bought something small and slightly impulsive and want to present it casually. It was a mantle-clocked, dark wood, hexagonal case, the numerals worn faint from decades of being read in lamplight. The mechanism had stopped, hands frozen at 723. "It just needs a new spring," she said. "But isn't the case beautiful?" She put it on the mantle in the sitting room, I said. It was nice. I meant it. That night we ordered food and watched something on television, and she fell asleep against my shoulder. And I remember thinking we're through the worst of it. I remember thinking those exact words with the satisfaction of a man who has identified the problem and confirmed it is resolving. The clock chimed at 3:09 in the morning. Not the full sequence, just 3 notes, slow dragging themselves out of the mechanism like something climbing. Then silence. I lay there doing what every rational person does, old spring stored tension, temperature change, a truck on the street. That's real, that happens. It chimed the next night, 3:09, and the night after. On the 4th night I sat in the dark armchair across from the mantel with my phone in my hand, feeling like an idiot, and watched the clock at 3:09. Chime, all 3 notes at full unhurried speed, with the hands still frozen at 7:23, and the spring I had personally checked 2 hours earlier completely unwound. When the 3rd note finished, there was one more sound, a soft, deliberate click, like something clearing its throat after a performance. I didn't tell Delia. I want you to sit with that for a moment, because it's the first of my failures in this story. Through June and July, the collection grew. Each new object arrived, with a story delivered in the bright, slightly pressurized voice. Delia had developed a curator's voice, with too much light in it. A hand mirror, silver-backed, tarnished black, and the engraving crevices which she kept on her nightstand face down. Always face down, in which she crossed the room faster than I'd seen her move. In months too, right when I once casually flipped it over a child's shoe, just one, the right one bronzed mounted on a small wooden base. A porcelain figurine, a shepherd boy, one hand broken off at the wrist, which she positioned on the windowsill of the guest room facing the door. I started closing the guest room door every time I passed it. Every time I passed it again, it was open. We don't have drafts that open doors against their own hinges. I checked. Then she carried home the sewing box. I watched her come up the front path in the gold evening light, carrying it in both arms the way you'd carry something sleeping, and I felt the first clean, undiluted drop of real dread land in my stomach. Because Clarence had owned a sewing box exactly like it, I had seen it a dozen times beside his reading chair, the reading chair he died in. Is that his Dell? Is that your dad's? She looked down at the box in her arms, and something moved across her face, slow and deep. No, she said finally. His had a lighter finish. A pause, then quieter, in a voice that wasn't performing anything, but it knew him. It what? Same era, she said, already past me, and through the door the curator's voice back in place. They probably came from the same manufacturer, isn't that something? I stood on my own porch and felt the street tilt slightly off. True. 3 things happened in the same week in August, and together they ended my ability to pretend. The first, I found the notebook. I wasn't looking for it, I was looking for our car insurance documents in the drawer of the hall cabinet. What I found instead was a slim black notebook in Delia's handwriting. Entry 1. The mantel clock belonged to a retired schoolteacher named Howard Price, wound it every evening before bed. Died at home alone, winter 2019, he knocks when he wants winding, 3 times, always. 3. He does not like to be ignored. Entry to the hand mirror, Dorothy Fenn, 19,342,018, kept it face down after her husband died. She does not like her reflection now, do not flip it, she is not angry, she is embarrassed. Page after page 14. Entries every object in our house catalogued in Delia's neat, precise hand. Each with a name, a life history, a death date, a set of preferences, a set of instructions, and on the last written page, underlined twice a single sentence, I have not been able to stop seeing since. They remember better when they're together. The second I heard Delia having a conversation in an empty room. Not talking to herself, I talk to myself. It has a rhythm, a muttering quality. What I heard through the guest room door at 11 on a Thursday night had turns in it. Delia would speak low and gentle, then she would stop, and the pauses were exactly the right length. That's what I cannot make anyone understand. Not conversational in the approximate general sense. Conversational in the precise sense, the length of an actual answer being given by an actual presence. Present tense conversation, past tense man. My hand was on the doorknob for a full minute. I did not turn it. The third thing was the coldest. I woke at 3:09 by then. It was always 3:09 to an empty bed. The clock was chiming downstairs, but slower than usual, drawn out underneath it, another sound I couldn't name. I came down barefoot and stopped 4 steps from the bottom, because I could see into the sitting room. Every object was on the floor. All 14 of them lifted from their shelves and sills, and arranged in a wide, careful circle on our sitting room rug, and Delia sat cross-legged in the center of the circle in her white nightgown, back straight, head tilting slowly. First left, then right, then right, then right, then back, in the attentive way of someone following a conversation told from across a table. The sound I hadn't been able to name was humming, not from her, from around her, from the circle, a low layered hum, like a congregation holding a single note. I said her name. The humming stopped the way a struck match stops, instantly and completely. Every shadow in the room seemed to snap taut. Delia turned and looked at me over her shoulder, and for 1/2 second, before her face rearranged itself into my wife's face, her expression was the cool, composed look of a stranger interrupted at a private gathering, waiting for the intruder to realize his mistake. "Nathan," she said warmly, "did we wake you? We were just talking." The next morning I walked 4 blocks to Tender Mercies. From outside it was aggressively ordinary, faded blue awning sandwich board on the sidewalk. Behind the window glass, a lamp, a stack of old magazines, a child's rocking chair, gently rocking. The door was shut, no one near it. It rocked with the small settling motion of a chair someone has just risen from. I watched it for a full minute, it never slowed. When I pushed through the door, and the bell rang, I glanced back through the window. From inside, the chair was still. The smell hit me first, that thrift store smell, but deeper in this place, older, and the sweet underlayer, much closer to the surface. Standing in the narrow aisles, I finally placed it. Funeral flowers, lilies mostly. That heavy waxy sweetness that gets into your clothes at a viewing, and follows you home. The store went back further than the building should have allowed. I know how that sounds. I have paced the block outside the building, is perhaps 60 feet deep. Inside, the aisles ran back and back, under buzzing fluorescent tubes, shelf after shelf, into a brown dimness, where the last rows stood in what was nearly darkness. I never once saw the back wall. The merchandise, everything, was the kind of thing a person keeps for 50 years. Wedding china, a pocket knife worn smooth by one particular thumb. Reading glasses, a basket of dentures, unlabeled, $4 each, hairbrushes with the hair still in them. These are not things people donate. These are things that get taken from houses after the last person leaves them feet first. You're Delia's husband. I did the thing where your whole skeleton tries to exit through your skin. She was at the end of the aisle, and she had not been there a second before, small, elderly, in a way that resisted any specific number. Gray cardigan, white hair, pinned up reading glasses on a beaded chain. Her name was on the business license by the register, Mrs. Aldrin Vera. I later spent an evening failing to find her in any public record. Older than the store's first appearance in a 1951 county directory. She walked me through the store as she talked past shelves of picture frames still holding strangers. Photographs past a pegboard, hung with dozens of keys to doors that no longer existed, and explained it all with the patient reasonableness of someone describing a very simple system. When a person dies, their objects don't simply become empty. 60 years of the same hands, on the same things. Attention soaks in, it doesn't evaporate. It waits, it listens for a familiar voice, and failing that, for anyone willing to listen back. Delia, she said, was the finest listener to come through that door. In 40 years, grief opens people, apparently wonderfully. I told her it stopped all of it. I told her I'd go to the police, consumer protection, anyone. She listened with her head tilted at a slight angle that I recognized. It was Delia's tilt, the listening tilt from the guest room, from the circle. And then she asked if she might show me something first, something in the back, something Delia came to see. I should have said no. I said yes. At the back of the store, past the last fluorescent tube, past the last labeled shelf, the temperature dropped degree by degree, and the lily smell. thickened from smell to pressure. The ordinary sounds of the street didn't fade, they switched off like a door closing that I never saw. And there, against a wall, I could feel but not clearly see, was a set of shelves, floor to ceiling, dark old wood. Perhaps 50 objects, each spaced from its neighbor, each sitting in its own pool of light, from a source I could not locate. The objects were aware of me. Not hostile aware. The way a room full of people goes quiet when someone enters who is not supposed to be there. In the center of the shelf, at eye level, sat a small wooden music box. Walnut hinged lid, brass crank on the side. The felt lining worn at the corners. I recognized it before I understood that I recognized it. The particular curve of the corner pieces, the wear pattern on the lid. It had sat on Clarence's dresser since before Delia was born. "That's his," I said. My voice came out in fragments that came out of his house. "It came home." Mrs. Aldrin said. "Things do eventually." She told me then what Delia was building, object by object. She was constructing something, a congregation. Mrs. Aldrin called it 12, was a congregation. 13 was a choir, and a choir could carry a voice that could never make the journey alone. Delia was laying stones in a road, and when the last stone was placed, she would bring her father's music box home along it, and the call that went unanswered on that February morning would finally have somewhere to go. "She'll hear it," Mrs. Aldrin said simply. "That's all she wants, just to answer the phone." I want to tell you my first reaction was horror. It wasn't. For one long second, my first reaction was relief. Oh, thank God it's for something, and that second has cost me more sleep than the circle and the humming combined. Because I nearly asked what it would cost. I nearly asked, standing in that cold, with 50 objects all pointed at me, how many more she needed to bring home. Mrs. Aldrin answered before I asked. "The dead don't want money," she said. "They want attention. They want to be tended, and your wife." Mr. Voss, she looked at me with those gray eyes, and this time they were fully present, fully engaged with something in them I recognized as appetite. "Your wife is the finest soil I have found in 40 years. I walked out. Past the shelves of keys, past the dentures, through the ringing door, into the assault of ordinary daylight. Through the window behind me, the child's rocking chair was rocking again. In perfect steady time with the melody I knew by then, as well as my own heartbeat, the 3-note chime from our mantel clock. It had been keeping that time all along, every day for blocks from our front door. A metronome in the window, waiting for Delia to finish counting. I went home. I counted the objects in our sitting room. There were 12. I stood in the doorway and counted them 3 times. 12, one short of a congregation, and on the shelf above the mantel, the space Delia had left open deliberately. I understood now, always deliberately, was exactly the right size for a small walnut music box with a brass crank on the side. I have not decided yet what I am going to do, but I hear the clock every night at 3 to 9, and sometimes in the silence after the 3rd chime. I think I hear something else, distant, thin, like a phone ringing in an empty room. And I don't know anymore if it's something trying to get in or something trying to get out.